So for those that don't know me, I'm Aldis Kratunas, Executive Director here for Purdue's EMBA programs. And the theme today is choosing the path that's right for you. I'm very happy to be joined by one of our IMM alums, Michael Dow. And I'll have Michael introduce himself here in a few slides, and he'll be taking questions from me and of course from all of you during today's webinar as well. Feel free to, if you have a question, you can use the chat box, or you can just unmute your mic and ask directly that way. We have a nice small group today that we can truly interact as we'd like during our session today. And the reason our theme is choosing the path that's right for you, it's because we think we have great EMBA programs here at Purdue, but it has to be the right fit for you. So a lot of what we do is to share information so that if you choose Purdue, great. If you choose a different EMBA program because it's a better fit, then that's a success as well. So in terms of who we are here at Purdue to help you along with this journey, we have myself, Aldis Kratunas, Brian Grimes, who's leading today's session as well, and he's our Associate Director of Recruiting, and Nancy Schmiegel, our Head of Admissions. So just getting you through that first part of the process, there's a great set of resources here. And then once you join the program, we have a great set of program managers to help you through all those particular steps. As you're thinking about EMBA programs, you're likely looking at different programs in different formats. And there's really three main ones that I want to emphasize I'm sure you've been looking at. One are online programs, which are what they sound like. They are online. It's typically quite flexible. You can do them from anywhere in the world. But the main drawback that we see is that you're interacting through a computer. And while there's a lot that one can do, especially through different online formats, in-person interaction has a benefit that online still cannot fully replace. Evening and weekend programs somewhat take account of that, where you do have the in-person interaction during class, but the main drawbacks, if you will, with that are people tend to live quite close to campus, so you don't have as much diversity of backgrounds. And second, because people are just fitting it in with all their other obligations, is they tend to come right before class begins and they leave right when class ends. So Purdue and about a dozen other programs have tried to bring together the best of both worlds. Flexibility, allowing you to live anywhere in the world as you go through the program, but in a format where you truly get to know your peers in the program, something called a residency format. And so with the residency format, we come together less frequently, in our case about once every 3 months, but when we do come together, it is for a longer period of time, 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the program that we're discussing. And so that gives you the flexibility, but when you're on campus, you're immersed in the learning and immersed in interacting with others in the program. So taking together, we like to say that there's some things you can only do in a residency format. This photo is from when we've been taking our students out on the Wabash River, about 3 miles from where I am, 5 kilometers. And so this is part of their teamwork and leadership session. And what we do is we take them out of their comfort zone because we think that's how people will grow as a manager. If you keep doing the same thing you're doing now, you're not going to grow. So we gave them a task, something that none of them were really familiar with, which was rowing one of the Purdue rowing team boats up the Wabash River. You can see they're smiling, but they're a little bit fearful all at the same time, which happens whenever you're taken out of your comfort zone. And so they got training, they're put in these boats, they're attached, so it was a very safe environment, and there's an immediate feedback loop. Is the river taking you downstream, or are you able to go upstream, right? So, and a lot of very successful managers, but trying to do something a little bit different. And so by having people together, they get to know each other, they trust each other, and we're able to do these types of different activities. So hopefully that gets you excited about the format that we have here. And so let me talk a little bit more about Purdue right now. And so Purdue, for those that aren't familiar, we're here in Indiana. It's a land-grant university, which means that the mandate that we have as a university is to have stronger ties to our students, the community, and society at large. We just celebrated our 150th anniversary, which is obviously a big deal, and a lot of events after that. We're part of the Big Ten Athletic Conference, so we interact with other schools in the region. And while today we're focused on the EMBA programs, keep in mind that Purdue is a leader in over 200 different areas. So you certainly will have access to different resources, faculty, libraries, even outside of the EMBA program. Purdue, we're called Boilermakers, and so we have over 600,000 alumni around the world, close to 50,000 Krannert alumni, and about 3,000 EMBA alumni. So while your cohort may be 25 or 30 different people, keep in mind we have alumni chapters across the US and really around the world as well. So you have that large family that you're part of. Purdue is certainly a well-known university, well-known brand, if you will. I travel a fair amount and people know Purdue. And if they don't know Purdue, they know our most famous alumni, Neil Armstrong, first person on the moon. So with that, let me talk a bit of what we'll cover during the remainder of today's session. We'll talk about your classmates because that's a critical, unique defining factor for our programs. We'll talk about our blended learning format because it is, as I've already hinted at, quite different than most programs. We'll talk about the benefits to you and your company. Why that's important is you can do an online weekend or evening program and your company may never know about it. When you're doing a residency format where you're gone for 1 or 2 weeks at a time, you have to coordinate that with your company. That may sound like a burden, but it's also an opportunity. When you raise the fact that you'd like to do an EMBA, that can lead to discussions of not only support, but benefits and what is the long-term plan for you within the organization. We'll wrap up with ways to get support and then next steps should you like to learn more and continue looking at admissions. And as I said, if you have questions during, feel free to ask. So a little bit about our programs. So this is just some of the organizations represented over the past 2 or 3 years within our programs. Michael used to work at Whirlpool, so we continue to have pretty much 1 or 2 people from Whirlpool. You'll be glad to see that. But as you look at this, some are going to be certainly familiar to you. Some of these organizations you may never have heard of. We have manufacturing, we have technology, we have from the military, we have defense, we have consumer products, and many, many more. And that's one of the amazing things is because you can live anywhere in the world as you go through the program, it's no one company, no one type of industry dominating our cohorts. So let me now give you a 3-year average of the backgrounds of students. Then I'll have Michael talk more about his own background as well. So we require a minimum of 5 years of work experience to be in the program because it's the point we see people start having more management or leadership responsibilities. And that's a common thread across everyone is having dealt with those people challenges. You all may remember when you were 22 and you maybe didn't quite understand what managing people is going to be like. If you do that now, then you understand it's a unique set of challenges that happen. Certainly no cap in terms of work experience. And we have a fairly steady 15 years average of work experience for people in the program, or in both programs, I should say. In terms of positions for people in the program, it fairly nicely tracks the years of work experience. From primarily manager, director, and VP are the 3 main categories. Some C-suite, some independent contributors or analysts, and 7 to 10% entrepreneurs, depending on the cohort. This particular pie chart, we make it add up to 100, but we have a number of people that their day job may be director, but they're also an entrepreneur in addition to. So that 7% is more of a conservative number. Industry, as I've said, no one industry area dominating. It is a nice array of different backgrounds. And geographically, across the two programs, about a quarter Indiana, a quarter across the rest of the United States Midwest, another quarter or so across the rest of the US, and about a quarter international. For our, what I'll call traditional EMBA program that starts every fall, it's a bit heavier on the Midwest representation, certainly in Indiana. And for our global IMM EMBA program that Michael is an alum of, the international representation is certainly larger than what we see here. So let me pause with that. Hopefully it's giving you a good idea of our students. And Michael, if you could talk a little bit about your own background coming into the program.
Yeah, thanks, Aldous. So as Aldous mentioned, I was with Whirlpool Corporation at the time when I decided to start looking for an MBA program. I was a team lead at the time, looking into getting into a supervisor management role, and really thought, based on the company culture, getting that MBA program would help me get there. So, during the time in the program, I was able to get into that role, and I think directly attributed to my MBA experience. So I had a good tie-in with my management at the company and letting them know that I was doing this, and I think it helped spur on the conversation to get me in that next developmental step. And I am from the Midwest. I was born and raised in Michigan, went to school in Ohio and Indiana now too, with Purdue.
And remind us what your undergraduate education was.
So I had a business undergrad from Bowling Green State University in sport management, actually. So I worked in sports for a little bit, and then got into data and analytics from there, being kind of the Moneyball aspect of things, if anyone's familiar with that book or movie.
Thank you. And we find that about 40% or so of our incoming students have an engineering or technology background or technical. I'll put IT with that. About 35%, like Michael, have a management, business, econ background, and about 25% are a Bachelor of Arts background. So again, all sorts of different educational backgrounds that we have, but it's what people have done since graduating that in particular informs us regarding fit for the program. I hadn't recalled the sports management part, I'll be honest. I do remember when I met Michael, it was up in Michigan. It was one of those Michigan winters. We had about a foot of snow falling that night before, but we still were able to meet.
Yeah, no lunch this time, but
what's that, Michael?
Take it in the mail. So no lunch this time on this call.
It's indeed.
So, Michael, which format did you enroll for the global MBA? Was it?
Yeah, I was in the global program, so
but which format of what do we still have? Elders, do we still have different formats like online and on campus and all that for the global, or it's only for the MBA?
Our two EMBA programs both follow, as and I'll show you here in a slide in a moment, both of them where we come together about once every 3 months. And those are the two EMBA programs that I will talk about. Purdue also at Krannert, we just launched last year, January. There's a fully online MBA program here. And we also have a weekend MBA program as well. Okay. My colleagues run those programs. I can certainly answer some initial questions. I can connect you with others on that as well. So we'll talk now.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. So looking at the curriculum, there's about 85% similarity between our two EMBA programs. And when I discuss the courses, I break them into 3 main categories. One are the functional courses, and these are pretty much the functions that any organization needs just to be in existence. They all have some type of marketing or promotion. They all have a finance area. They all have operations, accounting. And so there are the functions just to understand what's going on. Environmental refer to the business environment within which the organization operates. So understanding that economic area, corporate governance, legal and ethical. You note I'm saying organization, not company, because some may be not for profit or they may be coming from the government sector. And then integrative take that functional and those environmental courses, bring them together, but add their own level of theory or concept, because you need to be able to understand the whole organization to be able to do well within these topics. So my own area is strategic management, at least for my PhD. And so while there are what are called functional level strategies, strategic management really involves taking the whole organization, how you bring those pieces together to achieve competitive advantage. Change management would be another area. I'm sure you've all been involved in change management initiatives at your organizations. And in reality, really, do you just implement change in one functional area? Even if that's your initial goal, it's still going to have ripple effects across the whole organization, right? And then negotiations is another one where many schools, when they teach negotiations, they tend to look at it as a zero-sum game where your gain is my loss. Our view is that in most negotiations, the two sides are actually trying to maximize different types of goals. So with that in mind, you need to be able to understand the other person's, I don't want to say opponent, but the other person's goals, what they want to maximize. And by giving them something that they really want to maximize their position, they may give you something that you want as well. And both sides are actually better off than assuming that both sides have the exact same goal. I could go on, but I'm not going to teach the whole curriculum here, but hopefully that gives you an idea for how that integrative aspect comes into play. And the integrative courses tend to take place in the second half of the two programs. And let me talk about our blended learning format. I'll review it and then I'm going to ask Michael some questions because this truly is a point of uniqueness for our programs. So both of our EMBA programs, the traditional and the global, are 19 months from start to finish. We start with a 4-day online launch. In fact, our traditional EMBA just started last week. During those 4 days, or really 4 half days is how it works out. You meet the members of your cohort, you meet the members of your first study team, you learn about the technology platforms that we're using in the program. The main three are MS Teams, which most of you may be using, Zoom, of course, we're using right now, and then something called Brightspace. Brightspace is our platform for where the courses are hosted, and that's a platform used across all of Purdue University. We go through how to do a case analysis, and then you take one class for each of the courses of that first module. So by the end of those 4 days, you know the staff that's supporting you, you know the faculty for your first module, and you've gotten to work in your teams, and you've gotten to know everyone in your cohort. So you have that nice foundation to do well moving forward. That moving forward, we call pre-residency, some call it online. And during those 8 to 10 weeks, you're doing individual and team assignments. You're reading the e-textbooks that faculty have. Each course, of course, will have a syllabus. And as you submit assignments, you're getting feedback from the faculty. Most teams are going to be meeting once a week where you come together, discuss some of the assignments, help each other out. Of course, you have faculty to reach out to as well. What I'll note about these, the online portion, is what we call asynchronous. You choose when you access the content each week, with most assignments due at the end of the weekend. One thing that we are introducing actually this year is something called an anchor session. An anchor session is like office hours, and it's usually about 3 weeks into the pre-residency, but it is synchronous but recorded so that people can view it afterwards if they weren't able to join. And the goal with the anchor sessions is to share with the students about 3 weeks in, okay, here's where we are, here's what you should be understanding and be comfortable with. maybe the faculty will work through some questions or problems if appropriate, and then talk about what remains for that pre-residency. So it's more than just answering questions. The faculty are preparing for it, but it's a way to give a little bit more structure and interaction even in that online portion. But for the most part, you're not locked into having to log into a class or a session every week, except for your study teams. With that pre-residency, you then come to campus. That campus might be here in West Lafayette, Indiana. It may be Utrecht in the Netherlands. It could be somewhere in South America, depending on the program. And so during that time, we typically will have 4 90-minute classes. And then as appropriate, company visits, guest speakers, career management support, and social events. All that happening to complement each other within that residency. I'll have a sample week here coming up in a bit. When that residency and on-campus portion is done, you return home. You have about a week to catch up on regular work and prepare for exams. And then exams are over a 9-day period. They are online. You choose when you take the exams over that 9-day period. Most of them are timed from 2, 3, or 4 hours. You download the exam, start working on it. You can't pause the exam. Once you start, the clock is ticking. When you're done, you upload the exam into that Brightspace platform that I mentioned. When exams are done, you'll typically have a 1-week break, and then you start the next pre-residency with new study teams. I emphasize that because we in the program form the study teams to make them diverse yet balanced, and then we change the study teams each module so that you work with as many different people as possible during your time in the program. I know a bit of a long overview, but this is critical because it is our uniqueness of how we bring everyone together, give you flexibility, and to be able to learn from each other. So first question for Michael, looking at that pre-residence, I know it's been a few years since you graduated, but that part hasn't changed all that much. What was that pre-residency like? And I ask because in many programs, when people hear online, they think self-study, I'm not interacting with anyone. What was it for you and your colleagues when you were in the program?
Yeah, so it's definitely a little bit different, but I think we all have a lot of experience in working online now. But you know, for me, I was very regimented in my work, and I always had a couple hours every night that I put aside to do, you know, my self-study work. But we had weekly team calls that we scheduled based on, I think we had someone in California, we had someone in South America. So we had a lot of different time zones to take into effect, but we got a weekly team call. And then we also did a lot of chatting, you know, or group text messaging throughout the week, you know, hey, can you help me on this problem? Or let's talk about this at the call. So there's a lot of interaction as well throughout the pre-residencies. But for me, the thing that made me most successful was just blocking off that time and working on the actual assignments during those times. So we were prepared and we had good conversations when the group did meet as a whole every week.
Awesome, thank you. And then let's look at the exam period. Most people, when they think exams, they think about being in a big room with maybe 100 or 1,000 other people all taking the exam at the same time. Definitely very different in this. So what was that like, and how did you manage that part of the process?
Yeah, so for me, I was a much more relaxing area where I was able to go to my office and have my space and put me in actually a better mindset to take an exam than in a big room. So for me, that was really nice, as well as I could make it work within my schedule, right? If I wanted to do it all during one weekend or one day, I could. If I wanted to space them out, I could do that and put enough time together to make sure I was prepared to take the exam.
Awesome, thank you. I would just not recommend doing them all in one day. Just I know everyone has their own approach, but that usually isn't the best one, if I may say so. You have a question, Casper?
Yeah, I do. Well, I have a couple of questions. So, during the exam periods, how many resets are included?
How many what? I'm sorry?
Resets. So if you do not pass the exam, can you take a reset, or and how many are included?
Sure. So good question. The European system, and I've taught a bit in Lithuania as well, it's a little different here in the US because the way the course is set up is that you'll probably have 4 or 5 different elements that come into your final grade. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but you'll have maybe individual assignments, team assignments, class or online discussion, cases, and then a final exam, let's say. So 5 elements. And the way we've set it up is that no more, each element or component, if you will, cannot be more than 40% of your final grade, okay? So when faculty calculate the final grade, they basically add up all the points and determine that. So you could, in theory, fail the final exam, but if you have enough points on everything else, then you can still pass the class.
Yeah,
So we don't do resets, but we take a holistic approach.
yeah, that's a bit different indeed. And the other question I have is, so there is this on-campus residency, and hotels and nights are included in the price. But what
Yes.
happens if a residency cannot go through because of the COVID, because of the pandemic? Will there be a refund or something like that?
So good question, and that's been my life for the past 18 months. So I have a real answer, not a theoretical one. What we are doing is we are not converting our program to online. We did not do that last year. My associate dean, his philosophy, and all of Purdue really, if people wanted an online program, that's what they would have signed up for, okay? So what we did last year was we initially paused the start of the program, and then we moved the residencies to the US for the first 3 times. Almost everyone could come here to the US. For those that could not, we included them via Zoom. And so the program was able to continue. For module 4, actually our cohort was in Utrecht for a week, and then to Paris for a week. We added that, and that allowed the Europeans who hadn't been able to travel to Purdue, they were finally able to meet their classmates in person. There were, I think, 1 or 2 people that were not able to travel to Europe, so they joined via Zoom for those that had been. So we aren't converting. We haven't converted and we haven't canceled. Now, I thought COVID was going to be done in February of last year, so I'm not predicting anything, but we've learned to adjust, and that's how we've done it, is we want to give people that in-person experience in a safe way. I won't go through all the changes that we made, but maybe the top 3, certainly when they were coming here, was everyone was tested. Purdue has amazing facilities to test everyone. Then we would keep them separated until the test results came in. And then we basically created our own bubble here in the building that we're at. Cleaning, of course, but also distancing within the building. And then changing our food handling, that there was no self-serve, it was all individual portioned. But what was neat was everyone sort of filled out their request ahead of time. So to some extent, the food variety went up because we could adjust to people's needs. So there's a lot more I could say, but hopefully that gives you some understanding of what we've done and how it's been able to move forward.
Yeah, well, it does give some understanding, but if I understood you correctly, the people who couldn't make the residency didn't get a refund.
They did not get a refund if they were not able to come, but we accommodated by letting them join via Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
So that covers that blended learning format. Now let me start doing a bit of a deeper dive on the similarities and differences of the two programs. So our traditional EMBA, we have 5 residencies here in West Lafayette. And then we end with a 2-week residency at the very end, international residency. Its point of bonus or differentiation is that we have more electives to choose from. 3 are 2 credit that the cohort votes on, and 3 are 1 credit where the cohort rank orders options that they've said they're interested in, and then they'll split the cohort into 2 subgroups, and they're able to do a deeper dive on that particular topic. For the IMM Global EMBA, we have 5 residencies, 2 weeks each. And during that time, we go to US, Italy, Lithuania, Netherlands. So that covers North America and Europe, Brazil and Chile. Those countries may get adjusted, but we're definitely keeping a South America or Latin and South America option, and then Asia Pacific. Historically, it's been China, but we're looking at moving to either South Korea or Singapore or India, depending on what's best for the students and what can be done in a safe manner. And I'll emphasize safety. We've looked at safety for 25, 30 years. It's not just a COVID safety element. We went to Turkey for several years, Istanbul, wonderful country. Maybe some of you have been there. I would go to Istanbul tomorrow if I could. But it's one thing to go individual, it's another to take a group of 25 people. So that's where we have to adjust on safety in any way, shape, or form. Bonus point, the cultural and business immersion. As we go to these countries, we always do a city tour to help you get your bearings. We visit multiple companies in each country. You see the company, you interact with top management to understand their business models, understand their business challenges, and hopefully gain insights for yourself. And then you earn 2 MBA degrees, one from Purdue and one from our Dutch partner, TIAS in the Netherlands. Courses, as I said earlier, about 85% are the same. There's some in the global EMBA program that are much more tied to the location that we're in. One is business in society, taught when we're in Lithuania. Marketing in South America, the professors from Argentina. So he takes a bit of a South American spin or focus on some of what he teaches. Would be 2 examples with that. Michael, you would have had Nicholas Kafuri or not?
Yeah, we had Nicholas. It was a really cool class because, like you said, it was kind of very applicable to where we were and the location that we were in.
Awesome, thank you. Both you have the networking, you have the interaction with our partner for career development called Right Management. So they work with assessments, online resources, and executive career coaching. So again, that's true for both programs. You have a consulting project that you do towards the end for an external client, usually for an alum of the program is the sponsor, and then cohort-based elective. So some similarities and some differences across the 2. Format, as I've indicated already, quite similar for the 2. So jumping a little bit into the Global Executive MBA program. So it is a consortium of 6 schools from around the world. So we have North America, South America, Europe, and Asia, all bringing something to the table, either in recruiting, managing some of the functions of the program, and having that tie to the local community, local organizations, local companies. So it's not just, something planned from the United States or from, TIAS, but having each of these with those connections to their alumni and others. So we have that is what we like to say, global reach and local immersion as we go through the different residencies. So the way we have it set, we have that online launch in March, our first residency here in June of next year. And then we go to Europe Lithuania and Italy. In fact, our group that started last March will be going to those two countries here in a couple of weeks, hoping for good weather, certainly. With that, and by having Lithuania and Italy, where possible, we always have a contrast. Lithuania and Italy, both in Europe, of course, both part of the European Union, with very different engines of economic growth and very different histories, if you will. So you get a bit of that contrast aspect. South America, Brazil, and Chile, we've liked that pairing as well, because again, a contrast of different economic systems, even though they're both in South America, and not super far from each other, if you will. Then we come back to Europe. So our third European country, where the Netherlands as well, a different history and set of economic growth engines compared to Lithuania and Italy. And then we end with going to the Asia Pacific region. In general, what we're trying to do is take people out of their comfort zone as we go through the program. So for the most part, US and Europe tend to be a bit closer to people's comfort zone. South America and Asia a bit more distant. So there's a bit of that personal growth happening as well as we go through the program. And for our traditional EMBA program, that one will be starting next year in September. First two residencies are 2 weeks each. Residencies 3, 4, and 5 are 1 week each as we move into more of the electives. And then the international residency does take place there at the end. The location is to be determined based on what the cohort chooses from a range of options that we give them. So the dates given here are just approximate. I'm going to go back one slide actually on this, and the question for Michael. Usually the question comes up, what's the workload like as you go through the program? So my answer, and then you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, the first module tends to be the most difficult because there's a little bit more of the quantitative based courses, and people are learning to be a student again after a 5 to 30-year break. So there's a bit of a learning curve. I tell people about 20, maybe at times 25 hours per week in that first module when they're off campus, and then it falls to a steady state of maybe 18 to 20 hours per week afterwards. Do you recall what the workload was, either relative or how much time you were putting in? You talked about that a little bit earlier, but hearing right now would be useful.
Yeah, I think that the time estimate that you gave is pretty accurate. You know, there, like I said, I tried to do something every day to split it up. I know some people tried to cram it into a couple days just based on their life and their schedule. You know, with kids, it's thrown out the window sometimes. So I would say that is about right as far as time that it takes to accomplish throughout the program.
Thank you. Question, Casper?
Yeah, but I'm still thinking about my question. Just let me think about it. But so the program is 85% the same as a normal MBA, and we go to all these different countries to learn different types of theoretical models. I assume, but the theoretical part is for 85% the same. So what is the added value for going to all these different countries? Why do we have to travel to all these different parts of the world while 85% is the same? And that's basically one of the big questions I have with the global MBA. So why do we have to travel so much for having basically the same theoretical part? Apart from being a lot of fun and very interesting, but is there something different in the learning goals or the learning objectives for going to all these different countries? Am I making myself clear?
I think so. I don't know if Michael, you want to comment on that, or I can certainly.
I'll take a shot at it and then you can add on all this. So the reason why I chose the global program is because I believe that the world is becoming more global. Even with COVID, I am still convinced that we are a global economy and that's how we work best. So for me, going and visiting these places gave me a lot of deep insight of different areas that I would have never gotten if we just talked about it in a textbook. I think when we went to China, everyone there was saying, you are the expert in what is happening in China right now. In a couple years, that's probably going to be different because there's so much that changes and there's so much differences that happen throughout the world. So being able to go somewhere and be immersed and learn about the culture, see how different people work, really helped me. And I would say it helps me even manage a team today that I have, even though we're just diverse across the United States. I don't have a global team anymore. I used to have a global team. Helps me understand how different cultures interact in different areas as well. So although I'm not managing anyone in Mexico anymore, it does really help you understand, how other people work and how other cultures work when you get immersed into that learning.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess what I would add is, if all one wants, and I'm not saying this is what you want, but if all one wants is content, then you can just watch videos or read a book. But it's when you're in these different places, just the very being there is going to come into the classroom discussion. So yes, concepts in and of themselves don't change, but the context that you're discussing the concepts will change by being in these particular locations. And the student bodies is a bit different as well. You're more likely to have people from multiple countries in the global EMBA program. So to me, that's, one can hear from others or read books about these countries, but when you're there, it's the unplanned, if you will, conversations or benefits or things that we enforce people to do. In Lithuania, we had an instructor that one of her assignments was for each person to find three Lithuanians and ask them 3 questions. Yeah, most people freaked out about that, even though like 80% of people in Lithuania speak English, but it took them out of their comfort zone. But they had a connection to an average citizen in a way that they never would have otherwise. I would say. So I don't know if it can be quantified necessarily, but it does give you that range of exposure and insights to these different ways that just going and being in one country, I don't think will.
Okay, I understand all this, and I think it was the engineering background.
Thank you. So with the traditional executive MBA, here we have, as I said, the first 2 residencies are 2 weeks each. So this program is a little bit more front-loaded in terms of workload, definitely 25 hours per week in that September through end of February. And then it falls to around 15 to 17 hours during the rest of the time in the program. So here's a typical week on campus, and campus is in quotes because there's multiple places where that campus could be taking place. This one is when we're in West Lafayette. So within this, we have 2 classes in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 90 minutes each. We'll typically have a different topic between morning and afternoon to give you some mental variety, if you will. Breakfast, lunch included, of course. And then the company visit, we try to have that complement the course. So in this case, Amazon, it's about an hour drive from our campus. And so that very much complements their systems, the operations class. Also, people think Amazon has the best, newest technology. They definitely do not. Some of it is very manual, very people intense. So again, that's a surprise, if you will. In the IMM Global EMBA program, operations is currently taught when we're in Milan. And so our company visit has been to Cimbali espresso machine manufacturer. Very, very different from Amazon in many ways, but as well, it's seeing operations, if you will, for a high-end B2B company that makes a premium product, where each person works on the machine for about an hour before they move it forward. So not at all a typical assembly line. So again, the discussions of why is it done that way? What are the insights? When people have pride of ownership, helps reduce turnover as well, because it's not so mind numbing in terms of work. So many ways where people, because clearly I went on that visit, they're asking questions from the operational efficiency, but it was neat because the answers were that you can't just look at efficiency, you have to look at the person and their involvement in the process as well. So I like how that again comes together. And then free evening just means we in the program haven't planned something. You may be working on a case study or an assignment, and Michael, you had some of those evenings, I assume?
Yeah, definitely. I remember in China, we were working on a project in the hotel lobby together. So,
but then we also try to have some events. We plan dinners. We've done trivia night here in West Lafayette so that we could be distanced and safe as we went through it. So again, different ways that we try to plan the week, but of course not over plan. I think, Michael, by 1 or 2 days in the country, your group usually was pretty comfortable going out, finding new restaurants, exploring the city. Maybe you can talk about that for a little bit.
yeah, definitely. I was just thinking, I missed saying that, although we did have a late night putting a presentation together in China, before we did that, we did go out and after class went out and got to sample some of the local fare, local culture, and had some daredevils in our group that were willing to do some taste testing. So it wasn't all work, so it is some fun, and it does help in the end build that bond with the team, and you can go get back down to business.
Thank you. So in terms of the investment and what it covers, so we take an all-inclusive approach where the fee that you invest covers tuition, most of the fees, the books, course materials, housing, certainly when you're on campus, transportation within the residency. As you saw, most of the meals are covered, and the company visits, career support, social events. So a lot that comes into that. What you have to do is get to and from campus. Some of the meals, as you saw, are also on your own. And then for the traditional EMBA program, there's a registration fee of about $150 for international students as well. The price for both programs or investment is the same, of $90,000 US, and that's split into 5 payments over multiple calendar years. I said early on that we have to discuss, or it's important to discuss, the benefits to the firm. So as you're going through, you're gaining those 48 credits of the different types of courses. As a colleague of mine says, it's like learning 15 new languages, and I think that captures what's going on. After each module, you have that new set of skills that you can already be implementing within your company or organization. Alumni surveys show that people are able to have positive benefits on their organization. And after graduation, we continue to have ways to interact with our alumni. We have continuing education webinars. Purdue has events all over the world, as does TIAS for the IMM program. And then your organization could sponsor one of the active learning consulting projects that we have within the program as well. Hopefully that gives you some idea. I'm going to come back to Michael a little bit. Now, for some people, it's a journey as they go through the program. For some, there's certain courses that they were able to apply. Can you chat for you how that was? Were there particular things that you can point to, or was it sort of a gradual internal transformation as you went through the program, or how was it for others in your cohort?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, there were some classes that were able to apply right away, and some of the papers that I did were able to translate directly to a new strategy or maybe a new marketing event that we were doing, because I was working on a product team at the time. And then, but overall, I would say I still use things that I learned during my program today, managing folks. I still go back and look at some of the coursework that we did, some of the guides or tools and tips that we have. I still have some of the books as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Michael, I am Dutch, and I believe the Dutch are quite renowned for their directness. And may I ask you a direct question?
Yeah, what's going on?
So, did Whirlpool pay for your course?
So they helped assist with the program, but did not pay for the full cost. No.
Okay. And so that means that you paid a part of it yourself. Would you do that again, or would you pay the complete MBA for yourself? Do you think it's worth it?
Yeah, hands down, I would do it all over again.
Perfect.
I think my philosophy has always been that my biggest investment is my future earnings. That's worth it more than my house right now, is my future earnings. So anything I can do to increase that will definitely pay back my program. And I do think that my MBA program has been able to get me multiple different opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Like I mentioned previously, at Whirlpool, I did get a promotion while I was in the class, and I do think that was with my MBA and being closely tied with my company, and letting them know what I was doing and using those learnings and sharing it with my manager and my vice president at the time.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Michael. Also, you changed industries, if I'm not mistaken, Michael.
I did after I graduated. So as part of the program, I actually met my boss that hired me after the program. Through the program, he brought me out to California, and we were actually on the first team together. He brought me and another guy that we all worked together as part of the first cohort, and we all started working together after we graduated. So I'm now in the oil and gas industry.
Michael, do you mind if I chip in a question as well related to the same thing what Aldous just mentioned about changing the career? So was this planned move, like for example, pre-applying for the MBA, were you already planning to shift your industry, or was it just happened as in when you progressed with your program and you got the opportunity to network with different people?
Yeah, it definitely changed my philosophy. So I was planning on growing with Whirlpool and staying there long term. That was part of the initial conversation that we had of how that would happen. But after the program, seeing different companies, seeing different cultures, and being able to network, things change, right? As well, during the program, I also got married too. So my personal life
Congrats
changed
to
as
that.
well as my professional life. So you can have a life outside of just the IMM program. It's not all work every single day. You can. I went on a honeymoon during the program, so it is possible to have a life.
Now, the reason I asked you this because I'm actually running through some analysis for different programs. So last week, I had a call with one of the associate recruiting directors, Scott, from Purdue as well. And before that, I was in contact with Nancy. So I'm actually evaluating that. And there was a question raised to me as well, whether you are willing to change your industry or your profession post completing your master's, no matter what master's you do, either an MBA or an MS program, or you are planning to grow. So yeah, thank you for the answer. Thank you, Michael. It helps. Aldous.
Welcome. I've been there, so I understand.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the good questions as well. So this kind of leads into what we were related to what we were just talking about, career impact. So we have, as I said, assessment using the different resources that Right Management has, and then a career management consultant to work with. And the other is your cohort members, because you are coming from all over the world, from different industries and functional areas. I find that discussions are more open because they are not competitors in the classroom. So people are much more willing to share their experiences, their mistakes, what's going well, and it leads to, I think, a better dialogue. Data from The Economist surveying our students, close to 80% are promoted within 2 years of graduation. I find about another 10 to 15% are promoted while in the program, Michael being an example of that. So he's not in this data set, but it's an example of that happening. And then the impact on salary within 1 year of graduation. But I find this kind of goes to Zishan's question. About 90% of the students coming in plan to stay with their current organization, as Michael did. I do find that about 50%, about half, leave within 2 years of graduation, but about half still stay with their organization. So it may be they saw more opportunities that they hadn't thought about. Maybe promises made to them were not fulfilled, so they want to use their new skills somewhere else. But that's sort of a steady state trend I've been seeing about people staying or not staying with their organization. And then
thanks, Aldous. Thank you for that.
Now the next sort of deep dive on the IMM cohort. This group graduated right before sort of COVID started, so December of 2019. So their promotion rate is pretty much the same or even a little bit higher than what we've been seeing. But this is about a year and 3 months after graduation, 90% were still with their organization. So the transition not nearly as high with this cohort, but I'm sure many of you have heard of the term, the great resignation that's going on in the US. About what 2/3 of people are looking to leave their companies. So that 90%, of course, I would predict will be going down here by the time we hit the 2 year mark for this cohort. Financing, certainly a key question. The number one challenge to join our program is getting the time away from work. Everyone agrees that the residencies, 1 or 2 weeks to immerse yourself in the learning and shift mentally is the best way to learn. At the same time, those managers don't want to lose people for 1 or 2 weeks. So I'm very open on that challenge. And that's why we have even a deck called Gaming Company Support Toolkit within our website that covers not just financial, but time away issues. Most of our students get some tuition assistance from their companies, 75 to 85%. And so, have those conversations early on and plan what that's going to be like. And then people use savings, loans, and scholarship support from our program as well. So in total, what we see that between company support, savings, loans, and scholarships, they're able to create a financial plan to cover the cost of the program. If loans are of interest to anyone, then Kirsten Reynolds, KDREYNOL at Purdue.edu. She's the best person to contact. Just email her and you can engage in dialogue with her. Purdue has a large financial aid office. So if you give them a call, you probably will not get someone that knows our program specifically, whereas she is a great resource to learn more about that option.
And one point about, I think you're talking about scholarships over here. So scholarships are applicable to international students as well, if you qualify, or it's only for the local?
Yes, so anyone who's not fully company sponsored can apply for the scholarship. And the scholarship is up to 15% of tuition. And then there's a scholarship essay as part of the application.
All right, okay. And it's applicable not only to EMBA, but all the other programs within Purdue? Or it's
The
only?
15% are just, I'm referring just to the 2 executive MBA programs
Okay.
that I manage. The other
All right, okay.
programs, they have their own processes or systems for that.
Right, thank you.
In terms of next steps, so submitting your resume for review and GMAT waiver. I know some of you on this call have done that already, which is awesome. As you look at other programs, we invite you to share up to 3 others of interest. We'll prepare a program comparison for you, giving you, as I like to call them, apples to apples comparison. I found other places there's a lot of dynamism on their website, but it doesn't always mean it's a better program. So we've gotten good at doing that benchmarking. We can connect you with any of our alums, with Michael or others as well on that. We encourage you to have discussions. We'll be doing another webinar in October of how to have some of that internal discussion within your company and how to make the EMBA part of your next year's employee development plan. We invite you to visit us on campus, either virtually to attend the class or physically if you're nearby. And the application itself, fairly straightforward: resume, the 4 essays, 2 professional references, transcripts, and then interviews via Zoom with myself and the second member of our admissions team. I like to say, if you're admitted, get ready to be challenged. Michael has shared a lot today. The word easy program never came up, and there's a reason for that. It's not easy, but it's rewarding, I believe. I can say that for myself and Michael and all of our alums. And here I put up the deadlines coming up for the global program and then for our traditional program. So let me pause with that. We've had some good questions. I'll open it up to see if there's any other questions as well. Casper?
Yeah, just going on with what Zishan just mentioned. Just be 100% sure about the scholarship. So you only a scholarship is only applicable for me when I pay for this MBA myself, and I'm not applicable for a scholarship is not applicable for me when my company, my own company, pays for the MBA. That's correct, right?
So if you correct, if your company is paying 100% of it. Your company may pay 85%, and then you can still apply for a scholarship for the other 15%. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm just, yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
And maybe I'll add one more piece of information. What I find for people in Europe, and I know that's where you're located, people in Europe seem to either be fully company sponsored or no company support whatsoever. At least for those I've interacted with. Here, in general, in our program, I find it's somewhat changing, but in general, 25 to 30% are fully funded by their company. About 45% are partially getting support, and only about 25% are fully self-funded. So there's a bit more of a continuum, if you will, in terms of level of self versus company support, at least for people in the US. And we have actually had that even for people in the US. We find that if we're willing to sponsor or give some scholarship support, it makes the discussions with the company a little bit easier, that the student is not asking for full company sponsorship, but maybe 85 to 90%, and the scholarship can cover the other 10 to 15%.
I'm sorry, Aldous, just another question on the same topic. So
Sure.
scholarship is purely based on candidates' academic records, or it also has some criteria based on experience and the skill set you've developed throughout your tenure with the organizations?
Right,
Any
good
case
question.
studies?
So there is the one, we look at the scholarship essay that you write, and we take a holistic approach. We will look at years of work experience, a little bit at academic record, but that's not probably the most critical element. We will look at what organization people are working at as well, in that people working in the not-for-profit sector, usually the bump up from doing an MBA is much lower than people in the private sector. So we look at, is it not-for-profit versus for-profit, years of work experience, essay, a little bit of transcripts, and just taking that holistic approach, and how much company funded versus self-funded. So 5 or 6 elements that we look at when making that particular decision. Also timing. That's why there's a priority scholarship review. The earlier you apply, the more funds we have to work with as well.
And I assume that this is announced along with the acceptance when you get from the after your application is being reviewed by the institute itself. So when you will be sending out the acceptance to the candidate, that will have the final fee along with whether the scholarship is approved or any applied or no, correct?
So great question. It's in a way a 3-step process. So the admissions decision is done first. If it's positive, that's communicated to you, the applicant, and then that positive decision is communicated to the scholarship team for their review, and then they make a decision within a week, and that scholarship decision is communicated before the deposit would be due. That way you have all the information from the Purdue side before having to commit through deposit payment.
Right, clear. Thank you, Aldous.
Thank you. Michael?
I have to run, but if anyone has a question, feel free to ask right now. I can answer, or shoot Aldous or Brian a note and they can pass it on to me.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you
We'll
for your
pass
help.
on any. Thank you, Michael, for joining as
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. And thanks for the insights. Bye-bye.
Welcome. Bye.